Hello everybody, welcome again to another exciting video from Altura Tech Consulting. My name is Guillermo Cardona and today we're going to show you how to quickly create a utility to send emails using Power Automate. There's a lot of features out there that can do the same thing, or different tools that can do the same thing, but I figured since I've been doing a series of videos in Power Automate, how could we leverage some of the really cool things in it to do the same thing that maybe you could do with other things. So again, the requirement is very simple. Send an email to several records. Of course, if we want to send one email to one record, we just select that record, send the email, and you're done. But this would be kind of like in a situation where you're doing mass email, sending mass emails, or doing mass email marketing, anything like that. Now, the subject and the body, of course, will vary every time the email is sent. So if I'm sending one now, it would have a subject, it will have a body. If I'm sending one tomorrow, it will have a different subject, different body. We don't need any dynamic data, so I don't need, for example, the name of the contact inside of the email. I don't need any information about that contact if we're sending it to the contact. I don't need anything else. In the case of this utility, we need to be able to send HTML-based emails, so that if I want to send an image, I can do that, or if I want to send a nice formatted email with media and all the nice features that you can do with HTML-based emails, that you can do that. And of course, as always, we always promote as much out of the box as possible. So out of the box, out of the box, out of the box, right? Now, again, as I said earlier, you can do a manual email, which will work okay for maybe one or two records, but it won't work as nicely for many. You just can't select. You can just do a mass email. I mean, you could, but it's tricky, right? Typically, it's too much work. Now, there are third-party tools out there. There are several vendors that have add-ons that work with Dynamics that would allow you to send emails. But what if you're doing this on a Canvas app that is running off of SharePoint, for example? Well, those tools are out of the question, right? Now, there's other tools where you can export the data and send the email. But again, there's long-term costs and support considerations that you got to take into consideration. So we can take those out. And if you're using Dynamics 365, you can use templates. Now, the problem with templates, number one, it's very old. It's very old technology. I mean, they work fine, but they're when it comes to sending something that will change every time you send it, you won't be able to, because again, the template is meant to take data that may change dynamically based on the content of the database, but it doesn't change necessarily the body. So I'll give you an example. If you wanted to send an email every time an opportunity gets created, for example, you can send an email with a template, and that will always be the same, except that the data related to that opportunity. But in the scenario that we're doing, I want to send a very specific email, like an announcement, for example, every single time, and that may vary every time I do it. So that, of course, will be different. So what we came up with was create a Power Automate flow that basically will get triggered whenever whenever you select the record. I'll show you how to do that, and also I already talked about this a little bit on one of my other videos on how to do cloning, but this will actually expand on that topic, because there's a couple other things you can do on that trigger, which is basically adding boxes for the subject and description. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how that's done. So I have a flow that I created on a different environment, and we're using a combination of two connectors. We're using the old Common Data Service connector that allows you to run it when you're selecting a record. And I'm also using the new current environment connector that allows me to do some advanced features in Dynamics. So the very first thing is I have using the old connector, I'm running it out of the contacts entity. And here's the different thing that I did compared to what I did last time. The last time I didn't include any inputs, but when you're doing the record selected, you can actually add inputs that can then later be used on the flow. So I went ahead and created one for the subject, and then I created one for the body. That way I can capture what I want to use later on for the email. The next thing is I don't have to do this, but I wanted to specifically say who the sender is. Typically, whenever you run the flow, the flow will basically, in this case, if you're sending an email, will be sending the email as the flow owner. Let's say that I wanted to send the email as somebody else within the organization. So I went ahead and got the ID of that person so I can use it later on as the sender. So here's the information. I got the system user ID where the last name equals administrator. If I was using somebody else, I could change that to a different last name. Then I went ahead and initialized 3 variables, one for user ID, one for body, and one for the subject. And then after that, I got to set the user ID variable to the results of that list action. Of course, Dynamics, whenever you have a list action, it thinks it's an array. I'm sorry, not Dynamics, but Power Automate. So it would automatically do an apply for each. Now there's ways that you can get around that. You can basically use a first dynamic formula, and then you can do some composing. I didn't want to go through that. I know this is going to return just one, and that should be fine. Then I set the values for the subject and the body from those input boxes, and then I went ahead and create the email. Now this is using the new current environment connector. I went ahead and created email message. It's going to give you one party attribute, and the party attribute options are either from, CC, to, BCC, or CC. As you know, this is stored in a separate in the activity pointer table within Dynamics, and you can create as many parties as you want. So I created a from, and I'm using that user ID that I had in the beginning, and then a to, and using a contact. Now remember, when you're using lookups, you have to specify what entity that lookup is for. Otherwise, you're going to get a nasty error saying that it couldn't get that referenced object. So you got to make sure that you do that. Then after that, I went ahead and created the email. Now the body is on the description field, so this is where the body is going to be. And if I keep scrolling down, you get all the different regarding to. So whenever you're on whatever entity you can send an email, you're going to see one of these regarding boxes. I want to associate this email with a contact. So again, name of entity in plural form, contacts, and then the contact that I got from the selected record. And then if I keep scrolling down, here's the subject field where it's basically a variable. So pretty straightforward, right? Now this will create the email in draft mode. It will not send it. So I have to do another step, which is using the current environment. And if you look on the current environment actions, you'll see one that says perform bound action. That has a series of basically actions that you can create depending on the entity that you're running it with. In the case of the email messages entity, the actions available, one of the actions available is send email. And I can go ahead and say, okay, what email do I want? Well, I selected the email from the previous step, and then the issue send is equal to yes. Then I save it and I run it. Now, when I do this, the email is going to be shown on the contacts entity on the flow button. So if you look here on the flow, you're going to see the send holiday closure email flow. So I can go ahead and select a record, or I can select the multiple records. For this case, I'm just going to select one because I don't want to be sending emails to these fake emails. It's probably going to end up failing. So I'm just going to do for one. But this works for one or many, or as many as you want. So I go to flow, I get the send holiday closure email, and here's where you do the magic. Whenever you run this, initially it's going to ask you to confirm the connections, which is fine. I already have run it many times, so I don't have to do that. I'm going to do the actual subject, which in this case I'm telling everybody happy 4th of July. And then the subject could be anything. Now here's one cool thing. I can actually just type any email body that I want, happy 4th, so forth and so on. But I want to go ahead and make it a little bit nicer. So I'm going to use an actual HTML character. I'm going to use the break email so it goes down. And I can actually, let me do this with a P for paragraph. And then what I'm going to do is, sorry about that. And then what I'm going to do is I have a graphic that I encoded into Base64, and basically it's this big blob of data. There are several websites where you can have an image and encode it into Base64, and basically it will give you everything from where it says data here with a whole bunch of characters all the way down to this here. So what I did is I basically added the image tag and then an alt of that tag, and I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it. Now this is going to take a little bit because it was a pretty big image, so it takes a second, and then it says that, and then I go ahead and run the flow. Okay. Now it has to process all that information, so depending on how much data you're sending and your cache and a whole bunch of different things, this may take a little bit, but once it's done, and then it runs pretty quickly. So let's take a look at the actual email. And if I look, here's the email that was sent by the administrator. I can open the record to make sure that I see what I see, and there you go. Here's Happy 4th, and here's the graphic. Now the email, of course, is sent. If I look on the email, my email under Altura Tech, I'm sorry, the email does show up. So pretty neat tool that can be used pretty much for sending any emails that you like. So I hope that you liked that video. If you do, please subscribe to our channel. The link will show up in this section very shortly. Just click on it, subscribe. If you have any questions, you need any help with any Dynamics 365 implementations, anything with Power Automate /Flow, or anything with Power Apps, here's our contact information. Feel free to contact us. And again, look up for additional videos in our channel. I hope that you enjoyed it, and have a great day.